So, this is Blue Corp, huh? Phoenix said, looking up at the building towering over nearly every other building in the city. How were you able to get us an appointment with the CEO again? He asked Matt. I just called, Matt responded. They gave me a meeting immediately once I said who I was. He continued, tucking a slight grin away where Phoenix couldn't see it. The guy just most likely wanted to see the dead man for himself. If Matt had tried to kill somebody, he probably would have wanted to see the same thing, succumbing to curiosity. If Matt were anybody else, it would be a fatal mistake. For Mr. White, it was just unlucky. So, they just gave a meeting to someone who grilled his employee on the stand? Phoenix asked. And implicated him in a crime, yeah, Matt replied. Just checking, Phoenix said, still not able to get his legs to cooperate to move forward. This is a trap, right, Matt? It's gotta be a trap. All chances point to yeah, Nick, Matt replied, walking in front of Phoenix. Phoenix, on the other hand, just stood there, staring at the man before him's back. Cool, I was just checking, he replied. He had to take another moment before he could collect himself. He wasn't sure how he was, a man without any fear. By the time the two had walked to the top floor, sitting just outside of White's room, Phoenix had mostly collected himself. He even worked up the nerve to push the door open by himself, beating Matt to the punch by just a heartbeat. The door opened to reveal White, in the middle of a sentence, having just stopped talking. Matt listened closely to the other end of the phone. Hello, Mr. White? The voice on the other end said. It would seem my visitors have arrived, and they don't know how to knock. How tragic. White replied, the other voice on the other end pausing, before being replaced with a rather smug tone. Oh, I see. Well, in that case, I'll be meeting with Wesley myself. You need me to drop off the documents at the big building tonight? The voice asked. Even through the minor distortion effect on the phone, Matt could still tell it was Electra on the other end. Yes, of course, I'll be needing those, White continued. Understood, sir. I'll be seeing you soon, she said. It wasn't a message to White, at least the last part wasn't a message to White. Electra clearly knew that Matt was listening, and was telling him in no uncertain terms that she planned to see him very soon. And why did she bring up the big building? Was she just giving him coordinates? For maybe the Devil of Hell's kitchen to meet her there? Unfortunately, that would make sense. Electra always liked that part of him better than any other part of himself. So, if she was determined to give her so-called help, it would likely be when he was back in red or black. But he did have to make sure that Maya was okay. He wasn't gonna let her down, or let Mia down, because of his own wariness. So, to hell with it. He guessed he would see her soon. Red Wright slammed the phone on his desk, still trying to maintain his sense of composure. He was failing, if his heartbeat was anything to go by. It was beating erratically. Simply seeing Matt was enough for it to get thumping across his chest. And Matt wasn't even Daredevil right now. If he was, he'd assume the man would have a heart attack. Hey there, Mr. White, Matt said calmly. Well, he's definitely extravagant, Phoenix muttered. And shiny. Matt agreed. With his echolocation, he was only able to see the outlines of White's suit. But the colors eluded him. Even without them, though, Matt could still tell he was wearing enough gemstones to front a jewelry store. We'd like to have a word, Phoenix continued. Yes, of course you would. Words are a lovely thing. They paint splendid pictures, he said, smiling tightly enough that his unnaturally white teeth shone like diamonds in the sunlight. Matt, was that even a word? Phoenix asked, Matt shaking his head in response. Good, just checking. Please, friends, take a seat, his voice boomed. Phoenix did as he said, but Matt simply stood next to him. If it's all the same to you, I think I'll stand, Matt replied. White grunted in irritation for a moment, before forcing his calm demeanor back up. Matt could almost feel the man, trying and failing to deflect suspicion. Well, suit yourself, Mr. Lawyer, White said, taking a seat behind his big desk. A desk so big, in fact, that it took up nearly half the room. I take it, Phoenix said, taking the reins of the situation, that someone like yourself has eyes everywhere. Is that right, Mr. White? Including the courtroom? Phoenix folded his hands on the table. Yes. You mean how you uncovered that Miss May was trying to commit perjury on the stand? Yes, that. And the fact that you were present in her hotel room at the time. Phoenix cut in. Meaning? Meaning what, Mr. Lawyer? White cut in. Phoenix flinching in response. Well, I'm not happy with Miss May's behavior. I see no reason why either one of us would be suspicious. I mean, for goodness sake, men. Other than perjury, what crime has she even committed? Trespassing, Matt replied. Or maybe you did that. Red White narrowed his eyes at the man. Is that so, Mr. Lawyer? He asked, his voice slightly increasing in hostility. Matt suppressed the smile. The guy was clearly waiting for him to pounce with his true evidence. All Matt had to say was this man tried to kill him, but of course he couldn't. There was no proof of that outside of Matt's testimony, and in their legal system, evidence was everything. So the eyewitness testimony of someone who couldn't see, it probably wasn't going to be taken very seriously. But that didn't mean Matt didn't have a weapon of some kind. He just had to find the right moment for it. That is so, Matt replied. We found the receiver for a bug in her room, hidden away in her drawer. Oh, well, that is quite serious. It certainly sounds like she committed quite the egregious offense, White replied, as calmly as he was capable of. Even so, Matt could sense the tenseness moving through his body. Since the bug wasn't revealed to the public in any way, the fact that Matt not only knew about it, but presumably had access to it, was a problem, and a pretty big one at that. Certainly is, Matt responded. Given that you absolutely have known about the crimes Miss May committed, I don't imagine her employer would just show up to her hotel room for anything else. Other, of course, than being a collaborator. White stood up, standing face to face with Matt, mere inches away from him. Is there something you wish to say to me, Mr. Lawyer? You're saying an awful lot, but I don't see any proof. Phoenix stiffened. He did have some proof that could push White into slipping up, but Matt made it very clear to him on the walk over to keep his mouth shut about it as much as possible. Phoenix didn't really get why, but he trusted Matt, even if he did want to crush this guy right here and now. Well, there's a lot of things I want to say to you, Mr. White, but let's keep it polite for now. Matt smiled thinly at White's growl. You say you don't see any proof? Matt asked pointedly. How strange. Matt hid a smirk, and once again hearing White's heart thumping against his body, against his chest. He clearly knew what Matt was implying, but in White's mind he was still in the clear. Murdoch was blind. He could always introduce some sense of doubt if he was going to be an eyewitness, couldn't he? I wouldn't throw stones in that glass house of yours, Mr. Lawyer. I can tend to get very aggressive if pressed. White smirked. Matt smirked back almost immediately. I was wondering when you were going to play that card, Matt asked, Phoenix looking at him in confusion. He's threatening us, Nick. He's just not doing it very well, Matt said calmly. I mean, I think I get that, but how? Phoenix asked, staring between the two of them, before a certain conversation flashed into his mind. While Matt and Francisco were searching the hotel, he had gone to see Grossberg. And Mia's old boss seemed to be terrified by even the simplest mention of Red White. The guy had to have some kind of pull in public offices or something like that, which meant he might have even had control over some people in the law. So maybe, just maybe, the guy had already locked Maya up behind bars. What was one more person? You can throw accusations around if you want, Mr. White, but the fact remains, we're here by the order of the court, Matt replied. So, you will be appearing tomorrow as a witness, whether you prefer to or not. Not a great many people would talk to me that way and get away with it, Mr. Lawyer, White responded. Well, I'm sure you're usually a lot better at making first impressions, Matt said, the tone in his voice making it clear that this moment wasn't what Matt was referring to. Their real first impression had been much earlier, with Matt's attempted murder. White began, to Matt's surprise, to laugh, his tone lightening up significantly. Very well. If you believe it would help the law, then I would be happy to assist, he said, his teeth shining in the fluorescent light. Wait, just like that? Phoenix muttered aloud. Just like that, White confirmed. After all, it's every person's civic duty to make sure the guilty rot away, so they don't taint the streets. Matt rolled his eyes behind his glasses. He had seen that coming from a mile away. He was gonna accuse one of them, make an example of them. Chances were it was gonna be Phoenix, since saying that Matt was someone who could execute such a vicious attack was a stretch for most normal people, considering the precision it required. White would probably try to fabricate evidence too. That was easy enough to correct. White might have projected confidence, but he was more paranoid than most. Every time he was near Matt, a man who supposedly couldn't verify his identity, his heart pounded against his chest more and more. Even now, with White acting as calm as possible towards them, he was probably just a couple of ticks from the biggest freakout that Matt had ever seen. Even bigger than the one Stiltman had after Matt brought him down with the Defenders. Man, the Defenders. Matt almost got wistful, wondering what they were up to now, before snapping back to the moment. If this guy was on the edge of a tantrum, Matt would be more than happy to push him into full-blown paranoia. Glad to hear it, Matt responded, reaching his hands out. White grabbed his hand, firm, in a tight grip. One that probably would have hurt for most people, had Matt not been accustomed to far, far more by this point. I look forward to hearing your testimony. Maybe wear something a bit less flashy to the show, he said, letting go of White's hand. That small statement set White's heart into overdrive, pounding, 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 to the point that he was almost sure he heard it crack a rib. White just stared, open-mouthed at them, as they left the room. Hey, what was that about? Phoenix finally got the courage to ask as they left the building, sure that White couldn't hear them anymore. I think you got the same threat I did. Understood the same thing? Matt asked. You mean that he was gonna try and frame Maya? Yeah, No, Nick. Matt cut him off. Not Maya. Phoenix's jaw tightened for a moment. One of us? He asked quietly. This was only his second case as a lawyer, and the first one, without Mia there to guide him, to help make sure that he was okay. The stakes were already so high. Yeah, and probably you because, well, Matt began. Phoenix didn't need the sentence finished for him. Right, he replied, sweat accumulating down his face. This was a nightmare. This was the nightmare. He could get through it. All he had to do was prepare. Trust in your client was the #1 rule, and how could he not trust himself? Relax, don't spiral, Nick. He's not coming for you, Matt responded, Phoenix freezing in place. He hated me more. All I needed was to make him think that maybe, just maybe, you weren't blind, Phoenix realized, swallowing hard. Phoenix knew that Matt was at the law offices before everything went down. If White thought that there was even a chance that he might have seen something. Not to mention the last words that they left White to ponder on. To ponder on, obsess over. Matt, you didn't. Thanks for telling me the suit was so flashy. Really came in handy. Now he's gonna think I can see. And if he thinks I can see, then who knows what I could have saw when I left the building. Matt grinned ear to ear. Of course he couldn't tell Phoenix, or the judge for that matter, that he was present in the building while White was attacking. Revealing that would mean he'd have to reveal that he knew Mia was alive, since it would make Matt one of the few people possible who knew what happened to her disappearing body. Phoenix grabbed Matt by the shoulder a mere second later. Are you crazy? Do you know what he's going to... Yeah, I do. Matt cut Phoenix off. He's gonna leave Maya alone. Anything else is semantics. Phoenix would have went on, but he knew he'd do the same thing. Unfortunately, Mia taught them both to give every case their all. And if that meant taking all the risk in the case and making sure their client went free, then... Fine, okay, we can handle this. Chances are you're gonna be detained the second you walk through the door. Yeah, that stands to reason, Matt replied, shrugging. Phoenix's eye twitched at the man's nonchalance. Matt really was brave. He doubted that he would at least not be freaking out on some level. So, we just have to make sure that we have an answer for every contingency, right? Easy peasy. We just stay up until the sun comes up, thinking through everything they can throw at us. And we'll be fine, Phoenix said, whispering that last part to himself, more and more, almost as though it were a ritual to calm himself. Matt laughed as the two walked off into the night. This was an all-hands-on-deck moment, which meant everyone meeting in their hotel room as quickly as possible, especially since they didn't have an office anymore. If Phoenix had been behaving this poorly at the news, Matt could only imagine how well his assistant was going to handle the situation. When the duo opened the door to Matt's hotel room, Phoenix had to duck out of the way of a whip whizzing right above his hairline. You absolute ignoramus of a man, Francisca shouted. She was gripping her whip with such a strength of hand that Phoenix was almost sure she was scared it was going to fly away. I thought we didn't tell her yet. Phoenix looked at Matt, sweat pouring down his face. No, we just told her to meet us here, Matt responded. His amusement at the situation was being drowned out by the fact that he was sensing something else in this room. A figure he should have guessed would be here. She did tell him that she had planned to see him soon, after all. Of course you did. Not consulting with your legal aid before you go and do something so utterly stupid. Her eye twitched as she took in a small breath, allowing herself just the slightest inch of calm. Why am I not surprised, Mr. Murdoch? I had to hear it from your contact. In the corner of the room, Electra gave a wave so casual that it took a moment for Phoenix to even register her presence. I should have known it wouldn't have taken a long time for you to draw someone's attention. You really have a knack for getting into all kinds of trouble, Matthew. Matt? Who is this lady and why is she on your couch? Phoenix asked, turning to Murdoch, who had simply walked forwards past both of them, taking a seat in front of the desk in the corner, drawing out evidence from the case. He knew that whatever lie he came up with, Electra would go with it. She was a professional that way. That was if she hadn't already given some kind of answer, but he doubted that. She was very elusive when she wanted to be. Phoenix right, meet Electra Nachios, Matt said, waving his hands in the air casually as he did. She's a legal associate from New York. The lie came out so casually that Matt had honestly not even noticed he was doing it. Electra smiled, letting the new backstory click into place in her mind, already coming up with 1,000 different answers to 1,000 different questions nobody had asked yet. Thankfully, the first question from Phoenix wasn't exactly a hardball. Wait, you're a lawyer? He asked, Electra nodding without missing a beat. Phoenix could already feel some of the tension floating off of his shoulders. Matt's win record was never scratched, and with more legal help that Matt had met during his hot streak, this case was shaping up to be a slam dunk. He could always use another soldier in the trenches after all. But at the same time, why weren't you here earlier? Phoenix asked, pulling at his collar. It wasn't like they couldn't have used the help. Oh, that's simple. I didn't just come to town to see Matthew. I was at work, investigating Blue Corp for an upcoming case, he said calmly. Matt shook his head softly. No matter what happened, she never missed a beat. A natural-born liar. Her body barely reacted to her words. If he hadn't known, he could almost mistake her for being as truthful as a saint. I just came by today to warn Matthew for a couple of reasons, but I ran into Miss Von Karma first. Matt could hear Francisca click her tongue in response. After which she let me know that you're going to get framed for murder. An act which I'm almost sure you were able to see coming. You're not an idiot, Mr. Murdoch. I just want to know why. Francisca said, gritting her teeth. You could have just delivered your message and been done with it. True, Matt replied, spinning himself around. But if he didn't go after me, it was going to be Maya, he said, gesturing a hand in Electra's direction, essentially telling her that she could unveil a bit more information to back up his point. He was getting ready to send messages almost everywhere, pull in favors to make sure evidence could be falsified or that people were just too scared to view it in any unfavorable light. Electra confirmed. A coward's tactic to be sure, but one bound to be successful. If I know he's after me, it will be a lot easier to trap him, Matt responded. Francisca, almost immediately, grabbed him by the shirt, clenching her fist as the others just watched. Phoenix would have done something, but Matt didn't seem especially bothered, and this fiery, sober-haired kid was his assistant. The last thing he wanted to do was overstep. Did you even hesitate? She asked, her eyes half shut. You have people relying on you. You have a life, you... Take it easy, Fran. I'm not giving up or anything. Matt shook his head. You are going up against people who will do whatever it takes to win. Edgeworth, White, the entire deck is stacked against you, Murdoch. Yes, it is, Matt replied. Then would you please mind telling me how you are so calm right now? Francisca asked, unconsciously fidgeting with her badge. As a prosecutor, the mere thought of losing a case brought pain to her stomach, made her feel nauseous and twisted up inside. But now, when she thought about it, she never really had anything on the line. Sure, there was her reputation, there was her win record, but those didn't amount to much in the long run. At the end of the day, win or lose, she'd go home. But now, she was on the other side of things. Miss Fay, Mr. Murdoch. If she lost this case, she would never see either one of them again without a pane of glass between them. They would never be free. And while the same thing was true for her, that she would just go home regardless, now that didn't feel right. In fact, it felt quite wrong. She would go back to being a prosecutor, but right now, prosecutors were trying to take away her friend. No, her boss, Francisca corrected herself. Prosecutors, her little brother, was going to try to take her boss away from her. A man who had treated her with nothing but kindness and respect, a sentiment that couldn't even be shared with Francisca's own father. Despite the fact that the two had met on such hostile terms, something that would have made her father write off a person like Matt Murdoch entirely. Despite the fact that she had tried to get his client, a man Murdoch proved in court to be innocent, convicted of a crime. Something she was even fuming about after the case was over. He was still patient with her. He actually treated her like family, cared for her, like an older brother. Meanwhile, her current older brother had barely exchanged a few words with her in the past few years. Their relationship was more professional than anything else. work-related, like they were more colleagues than family. And when all was said and done, the people responsible for ruining Matt's life were just gonna go home. The prosecutor would walk away, marking Murdoch's life as nothing but a win. She stared down at her badge, clenching it in her hands, to the point that it began to hurt her palms. Because, in the toughest of times, Matt began, lawyers have to smile the biggest, Phoenix added. Francisca looked back to see him smiling, even when she knew that the fool was just as nervous as she was, maybe even more so. Even the other woman in the room was calm, like she knew everything would somehow just work out. Look, sometimes you just gotta have faith. Nothing worth doing in life means you don't risk your neck a little bit, Matt said, chuckling just enough that somehow Francisca found herself with a small smile on her face too. He let go of his jacket, letting her hand dangle to her side. Defense lawyers, all insane, all fools, she said, wiping her eyes with her arm. Fine then. She looked up. Let's prepare. It was an hour into normal preparation, during which Nachios hadn't really said much of anything. He chimed in a couple of times with advice, specifically when Phoenix was playing the role of defense in their little stage play, shooting in when she thought he had made a point that was a bit too weak. Your Honor, my client clearly had no motive to— They will make up a motive, Mr. Wright, Electra shot in without missing a beat. She shook her head as she spoke, a motion that seemed to evoke a sense of disappointment that made Phoenix flinch in a way that nobody outside of Mia had. He really had that glare down. He could feel himself shrinking down to half his size. Oh, right, yeah, sorry, Phoenix replied. Don't be. Very little of this matters anyway. He glanced toward Phoenix. Not when you have that picture. He gestured toward a piece of evidence that Phoenix had laid out, an image of a large footprint in carpet. Huh? Phoenix asked, Electra clicking her tongue in response. In order to denigrate Mr. Murdoch, he is more than likely going to try to paint himself as a witness. He seems like the type to take things very personally, after all, Electra mused. And we gave him the perfect starting point. We already proved he was in Miss May's hotel room, Phoenix realized, pressing his hands to his temples. How did I not see that coming? Because you don't have much experience dealing with manipulators, dear. You will soon enough if you choose to stay in this profession. Especially if you're going to be dealing with the same people Mr. Murdoch has to. She grinned pointedly at Matt, who sighed in response. Electra was nothing if not very unsubtle. But you thought ahead. That little picture of yours proves that a man with a very large footprint was at the crime scene, meaning White himself was there. All you have to do is ask for a comparison of his footprints. Francisca, who had been playing the prosecutor in their run-throughs, hummed in thought. Unless he claims he was in the office at some other time, she responded. There's no way to prove he wasn't, and admitting to trespassing to avoid a murder charge seems like a very likely route of escape. Oh, I suppose that's a good point, dear. Electra nodded. I suppose you'll just have to figure out a countermeasure, won't you? Such as, say, this? Electra placed a photo down on the desk. Security footage from a hotel. It was very clear. It was even time-stamped, exactly 15 minutes before Mia's murder, and it showed Red White, clear as day, his clothing as loud as ever, leaving the area. Wait, what? Where did you even get this? Phoenix asked. If he wanted to get this kind of footage, he'd have to bend over backwards, call in every favor he ever had, and probably still come up with nothing. Especially since White wasn't even officially a murder suspect. From the hotel, dear. I thought that much would be obvious, Electra replied, smirking. Outside of that, I have my methods. I'm sure you and Miss Von Karma can use this to come up with some very useful arguments. Both Phoenix and Francisca looked at her in confusion as Electra walked to Matt's side, grabbing him by the arm. Me and Murdoch here will go talk to some of our other friends, see if they can't pry anything up. What? Phoenix asked. But... It's fine, Nick. Don't worry, Matt said, walking towards the door. If there's anybody who I'd trust to defend me who's not me, then they're in this room. All three of us together, it's not even gonna be a stress. He shot a thumbs up to the room in general as he disappeared behind the walls of the hotel, letting the room's door slam behind him. Well, hurt him, right? Francisca responded. Phoenix looked back at her, a look of determination mixing into his stumped expression, until his stumped expression disappeared entirely, replaced by one of clear-headed confidence. If this White guy wanted a fight, Phoenix would give him one for the ages. Matt wasted no time. The second Electra lured him to an area clear of prying eyes, he followed her to the rooftops, jumping leaps and bounds until the pair had landed on top of the sprawling cityscape. looking out over California's skyline. Great view, Matt said plainly, pulling his suit from his bag. He had a feeling he'd be needing it soon. It is, Electra responded. It's likely going to look much better once you don't have all this business hanging off of you. You know, the second you pulled your little attention grabber with White, he called me and told me to silence you. Permanently? Matt asked. Of course, dear. Is there any other way? Electra responded. Matt scoffed, a sly smile crossing his face. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Electra continued, goading the man into making such clear mistakes. Of course I am. This time tomorrow, he's gonna be locked in the same jail cell that Fisk guy's gonna be in when I'm through. And an innocent girl walks free. Win-win. Well, I can guarantee that one of those things is likely going to happen. Electra responded, to Matt's confusion. Your people in there are good, Matthew. They're quite good, as a matter of fact. More than good enough to get you off scot-free. And once White is forced to say that his testimony isn't reliable, they most definitely won't have enough to hold Miss Fay. You'll get you're not guilty. The problem is what comes next. She sat on the edge of the building, changing into her own suit. The second the red fabric replaced her current garb, she began moving freer, less restrained, like a butterfly spreading its wings after being caged in a cocoon so long it had nearly forgotten that it might be able to fly someday. See, unlike you, I've had the chance to look into connections on this paper that you've been holding with you. He responded. Of course she was referring to the paper that Mia gave him. The one with different connections that Blue Corp had established with corporations and political campaigns all over the state. And to a Mr. Wilson Fisk, whoever that was. She was right. He had been so busy trying to keep Maya afloat with all the accusations being hurled her way, he hadn't even had a chance to look at the obvious. Thankfully for you, I've handled that responsibility. He paused, looking at Matthew for a moment. You know, you could say thank you, Matthew. I am making your life significantly easier. Yeah, you are. I'm just trying to figure out what it's gonna cost me. Matt replied flatly. To his surprise, there was no cutting remark back from Electra, no brushing it off, just her taking a deep breath and saying, Fine, Matthew. That was deserved. Matt felt shock moving through his body. Electra? His Electra? Saying that she deserved something but the best? And judging from the steadiness of her vitals, she very clearly meant it. There was nothing but earnestness in her heart. I told you, Matthew, you're not dealing with the same person anymore. She crossed her arms. And I fully intend on proving it. If, that is, you allow me to. It'll be much easier to help you if I don't have to do it with you kicking and screaming the whole time. He said, waiting for Matt's response. After what felt like an eternity, Matt finally gave his response. A short, silent nod. It wasn't enough, but it was enough for her to run with. He cleared her throat. Now, as I was saying, the individuals involved in the groups that he's received funds from include the Committee for Prosecutorial Excellence, the same group that judges belong to, Matt realized, scratching at his facial hair. Exactly, meaning that it's more than likely he has something on not just the judge in your case, but several other dozen in the state, he continued. And given that judges hold almost all the sway in legal proceedings, there's virtually no chance of you getting him convicted on anything. He could admit to killing Miss Fay in front of 1,000 cameras and nothing would change. Electra said, putting the word killing in deep quotation marks. She was the one contacted to clean the scene, after all, making White believe that a body that in fact didn't exist was somewhere rotting away. Which I assume brings us to why we're here? Matt asked, Electra giving a very short, curt nod. Well, let's see. In order to get him dead to rights, we basically need him to want to go to jail then. Practically beg for it. I'm glad you and I are on the same page, Matthew, Electra responded. In all my time being around Mr. White, he was only ever nervous when dealing with two groups. The first were the Cadaverinis. The mob family? Matt asked. He heard a couple of things about them before transferring to California. None of them were particularly good, but they seemed like small fish relative to the people he faced before. Very same. The other was the boss. He only ever referred to Fisk that way in mixed company, terrified to even say his name out loud. I think you can guess which one would prove beneficial, Electra said. So, you want to prove a link between his company and Fisk? Matt asked, Electra clicking her tongue in response. So close. We have to prove that they're both involved in non-legal dealings. She waved her finger in the air, waiting for Matt's interest to increase. Leaned in, just as she suspected. Always easy to grab his attention. If you're doing illegal dealings, you have to trust both parties to be discreet, he explained. But when one of the parties is terrified of the others and has a penchant for blackmail, you think White kept compromising information on Fisk. Matt pondered. It made sense. If you were truly terrified of your opponent, and you needed every edge you could in case the two of you ever came to blows. And if the fact that White ever had insurance on his partner came to light in a courtroom, well, prison would just be the safer choice. I take it he doesn't keep it in his office. Matt said, less a question and more of a statement of fact. In his eyes, things were never that easy. Correct again, Matthew, Electra said, leaping off the side of the building. A clear invitation for Matt to follow her. She had never bothered to do anything straightforward, had she? Matt had almost missed it, in all honesty. 15 minutes of popping into the shadows later, and they had arrived, at a building so large it practically cleared the whole skyline, glancing over the city so clearly that those at the top could probably see for miles. The building, appropriately named the Big Building, with an extra G on its end. Matt knew at the top of this place stood the Committee for Prosecutorial Excellence, the location that held a complete chokehold on prosecutors and judges. The Big Building. I heard you mention this over the phone. Thought it had something to do with Fisk, Matt asked. That it does, Matthew. Electra pointed near the top. The perks of being involved with the less than legal half of the city involve people telling you things. A great deal of things, in fact. Such as the fact that the committee up there runs a bit of a smuggling operation. Sale of things from old cases, like. Matt had barely been in the city for less than a week, and already the dark underbelly of the law was showing itself. That had to be a record. In New York, it had taken him at least a year. But they don't just provide goods, they also provide services, such as, say, the use of government-issued vaults to store information, he explained. Matt nodded in understanding. That guy must have had some information on the people he blackmailed inside. If anyone, especially the law, had wanted to come sniffing, they would need so much clearance that it would give them time to move everything out, especially considering how high level the building was. He glanced over to Electra, whose pose appeared to straighten, showing her heightened confidence. I told you I'd be useful, Matthew. Does your usefulness include knowing where this information is stored? Matt asked, Electra rolling her eyes in response. What do you take me for, an amateur? Of course I know. I just also happen to know that it's never unguarded. Electra clarified. Matt groaned. Of course there'd be security, but it wouldn't be anything he couldn't handle. How bad? Matt asked. To his shock, Electra just shrugged. I may know a great deal, Matthew, but I don't know everything. Certain things in life, unfortunately, require a leap of faith, he said, parroting his words back to him from before. She stood from her heightened position and reached a hand down to him. And I have faith that this little scenario will be nothing to the two of us. Don't you? Matt clenched his teeth. If this escalated into something big, news headlines would be blaring the news of Daredevil's return. The fact that he had relocated from New York. And just like that, any element of surprise he had in California would be gone. But, if it worked out... He grabbed Electra's arm, the two of them leaping away together, ready to confront whatever laid ahead. Hey everyone, glad to see you back again, and glad to return to this little corner of the OCU universe. I was debating whether I wanted to do this one or the Dragonball one first, since I was working on both scripts, but I eventually decided on this one. It had been a couple of months since I last updated Wright and Murdoch, and I really thought this series could use some love. If you are antsy for Dragon Ball content though, don't worry, that's up next, and I'm really excited for it too. As for this one, I really hope you enjoyed it. My plan was to write the script for this episode until I got to the next court bit, but the script was turning out way too long for that, so unfortunately that has to wait till next time. But I'm glad I got as many character moments out as I did, especially in terms of increasing Francisca's character development a bit more, which I have been thinking a lot about. Next time when it comes to this series, we're going to be tackling some Daredevil fight action, which I'm really excited to tackle, and going back to court cases hopefully. But with all that mess out of the way, I just want to say thanks again for checking out my channel. It really means a lot. Just seeing that so many of you guys stopped by just always brings a smile to my face. So, if you did like this video, please be sure to let me know by hitting that button, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the future of this or any of my other series. In the meantime, I'm your captain, and it's been a genuine pleasure to take you on another tour of the strongest Earth in the multiverse. I'll see you all next time for some Dragon Ball action. Bye now!